much more.
Well, hello, welcome to Inxs, Access All Areas, episode 228, the podcast that always dives deep into all things great about our favourite band, doing with a bunch of listeners around the world, even a new patron this week, I believe, B. 3 patrons this week. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello to you, B. How are you?
I'm not too bad, Haydn, multitasking as we're going along.
Why don't we quickly go outside protocol, B? Why don't we just welcome our 3 new patrons aboard?
We don't know their names.
Oh, isn't there one called Bronte?
How do you know?
I did some research for once this week, and it's going to pop up. So, hello, Bronte, and then our other 2 we will put in post-production.
Well done you. Oh, my gosh. Fallen on the floor. Yes, Carrie Ann is onto it, and she'll thank you guys for following us and also becoming patrons. That's fantastic news.
And they were subscribers, but you didn't think that. We thought they were patrons.
Well, that's it. I think what you said last week has worked, hasn't it? Yeah. But yes, Carrie Ann will be in touch with the digital goodies, and unfortunately, Trump has stopped all postage for us to go to America as of today.
I heard about that. Yeah.
So even though Haydn has just seen me getting ready for the raffle, if you're in America, you're not going to get it for a while.
Well, you know what? Maybe we need to take a trip. The Inxs Access All Areas goes on tour. We've always talked about that. Do our road trip across America. But we will. The mail shall get through eventually, somehow.
Just temporary, I hear.
Now, B, we're coming off, I think, a week off after 3 episodes and things, but we're very excited about today's episode. We'll reveal all in a moment. What's happened in your last sort of week or 2 in your Inxs world?
Well, when I come off air from talking to Gary, me and Gary spoke the next day, and it was surreal, actually. We were talking, and I said, do you know that JD's come in? And he goes, oh, yeah. He says, I know the promoter. I used to work with him. I went, great. Get me in touch. So I've been in touch with Fraser, and that's going to be happening soon. Hopefully we'll be getting our interview at bloody last.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
And then on the back of that, I hope that you'll reference that a friend of mine, let's just call him Wolfman. He's a friend of James, he sent me a piece about Prince, which we knew was out there, that Prince was a lover of Inxs music. He used to rock up in disguise at the back and take notes and things. It's actually a little video now that's out there. We put it onto our socials and it's gone wild. I spoke to Danny Saber about it, and Danny knows the bass player who did Let's Go Crazy and Dev Cry. And he says, oh yeah, my mate Levi, do you want an interview? Such, yes, please.
Oh, one of Prince's guitarists. There we go.
Oh, yeah, we'd like that, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, so, I think
I've been a bit busy.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. I was going to reference that in our news a little bit more, but that was a great little find. Prince.
Thank you to Wolfman for that.
Thank you, Wolfman. Anything else come across your desk?
Well, I've just been really enjoying reading everyone's comments on our socials. There's some people that have known Inxs personally, and there's some great ones. I mean, it was Rhett's birthday in the week as well, and there was somebody who went to school with him, and they were talking about their maid. That was quite funny. But yes, I've enjoyed having a week off and reading everybody's messages.
All right. Well, back B, our topic today, we've got very much a special episode. It's going to be a 2-parter. We've been chasing this particular gentleman for about 1.5 years, and quite funnily, I think he thought that your podcast and my podcast were 2 separate podcasts, and he didn't know which one to go on, and then he realised that we're the same podcast. So we have found the elusive Gary Grant, who's going to be coming on, and Gary's reputation precedes him. He was a guy who effectively co-managed the band in the early 80s there with Chris Murphy, and was really Chris's right-hand man. And obviously we don't have Chris anymore, so very excited to get some great stories and a deep dive with the inimitable Gary Grant, who's full of energy, and we're going to have a 2-parter coming up with him today, B. I can't wait to share that with our listeners.
Yes.
Absolutely. But what's the time for?
It's time for the news.
Hi there, this is Kirk, and you're listening to Inxs Access All Areas podcast with Haydn and B. And now, it's time for the news.
All right, well, we'll get straight into the news, okay? There's a bunch of Wembley articles sort of as a bit of an afterglow for the presentation of the special on Channel 7 2 weeks ago, and obviously something like that comes out with Kirk and John sharing anecdotes, but around the globe there's been lots and lots of sort of publications and press clippings about that particular presentation and production that night, so if you put in Inxs Wembley, you're going to get a bunch of newer anecdotes and information there. Also too, but I want to give a little bit of a shout out to these guys. There's a cover band in America called the Devil Insiders, and they're doing a big fundraiser along with Grunge Light, another cover sort of band, and they're playing at the Buffalo Rose in Colorado on September 4th and raising money for suicide awareness. So big shout out to those guys and kudos to them. Also mentioned a couple of weeks ago, B, the Rockstar 20th anniversary is coming up on November 21 in Ontario, Canada at the Chatham Theatre, which is where JD did play recently. And kudos to them. They're doing a big get-together with about 6 or 7 of the original cast members, particularly Marty and Taylor and a few others there are going to be spearheading that. Also, to B, JD is touring, as you said earlier. You're going to be chatting to the touring manager, and it's now nearly September by the time this episode comes out, and we're going to be having October come around very soon. It's only about 5 weeks till JD arrives, and I believe you might have snared a ticket the other day. Is that right?
Me, I've got 2 tickets. I'm going.
2 tickets?
Are you
Which ones are you going to?
I'm going to the one in Coolangatta in the Gold Coast with, there's a big group of us going up there with the Brizzy lot and the Goldie lot. And then I'm going down to Sydney to Selena's. First time going to Selena's. That would be cool. And taking Carrie Ann to both of them.
I might want to come up for the Coolangatta one.
Oh, do you know what I heard on the radio today, that they're doing some $29 deal tickets from Melbourne to Brizzy?
Maybe I'll check that one out. I'd love to maybe see that one. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be really good, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Also, shout out to the Induct Inxs promo team. Obviously, they come and bring little articles and things out. So they've released a couple others. If you ever see these or download them every month, share them amongst your friends, get a couple of signatures there. They all add up, these signatures, don't they, B?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I think we've surged to 20,000 sort of over time, but it'd be great to sort of do an Inxs access all areas and surge to 30,000 plus.
Yeah, and also they've been pushing the petition that's going out there. Then it only seems like there's only 2 of us in the actual list. It's us and Phil Collins, but we're like threefold above him. But yeah, every week you can put an email or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, like I have, and keep them going up the list for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees.
Absolutely. Also, too, bit of a happy birthday anniversary. A couple of Inxs singles. One of our faves, Not Enough Time, turns 33. Released around the Olympics in 1992 in August, second half of August that year. And also Kiss the Dirt, famous film clip we did, but was released as a single in August 86. So 39 years ago was a single. Feels like yesterday, B.
I know, it does, doesn't it? I just love Fall Down the Mountain and End Up Kissing Kirk. Yeah, so Way of the World also 35 years ago today. This week, I should say.
Yeah, and another one, speaking of Kiss the Dirt, Andrew Farris at the moment is posting some holiday snaps across the globe.
Kiss in the sand.
Yes. Yes. So I said to, I think I'm coming up with a song for every caption he comes up with. He was with a bunch of family, etc. there. So I sent a text going, we're all thrown together. And he's on the sand playing, so I said, Kiss the Dirt. So if we can come up with the many songisms for any of Andrew's posts, join the fun there. And also, yeah, again, another shout out to the Prince list there. What was quite interesting about that video, B, was that of the 6 artists that got mentioned there, Inxs were the only white guys. The other ones, I think, were Sly and the Family Stone and maybe Hendrix and some others there. So it was a great little video there. And often, as I've said, Inxs Needed Tonight was very much emulated by Prince when he did Alphabet Street a year later. And, a song like Kiss has some very much Inxs in it too. So, again, if you haven't seen that little promo on our socials, go check that one out.
Can I add to your news of the week? Just like to give a shout out to Kirk Pengilly's daughter, April Rose. She's getting married this weekend in Paris.
Big congratulations. Oh, well, we saw Kirk and
that's
Wayne over there. I didn't know that was the reason they were there. So well done. Okay.
Yeah, he looks like a fun guy. I don't know what his name is, but he looks like he makes her laugh and makes...
The last time I saw a rock star on the Eiffel Tower, it was, I think, the Duran Duran Boys in A View to a Kill. With their berets.
Hey, this is Tim Farris. Big shout out to Haydn and B. Also want to say hello to all the listeners and Inxs fans. Thanks for listening. I love you, Haydn and B. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thanks, Tim. And now it's time for Topic of the Week.
All right, B. Well, we're very excited, actually, for our next guest coming on. Somebody we both sort of chased, I guess, over the last year or two, and he's finally landed in our Inxs world. And that's the famous Gary Grant, who was a real pivotal cog behind the scenes in getting Inxs airplay and coordinating gigs and managing venues and a whole bunch of exciting stuff we're about to share and hear from. Live via satellite, coming in all the way from the New South Wales coastal beaches. Let's bring Gary Grant in, B. Well, we're very pleased today to welcome Gary Grant, who I'm going to sort of nickname the silent achiever of the Inxs world. Gary, welcome to Inxs Access All Areas. We're very, very excited to have you on finally.
Thank you for having me on finally. When Listen Like Steve's 40th anniversary thing was announced, I was like, oh my God, where did that go? And and was that a dream? But it did happen. And
Well, I'd like to give our listeners a little bit of a sort of a slight introduction and some genuine praise for you, because just a little bit about us first. We're a podcast that is, I guess, about 228 episodes in, Gary.
Wow.
We have interviewed lots and lots of different people over the journey. Fortunately enough, each member of the band individually, kindly sort of mentored by Mark Opitz in some of the early episodes, and Nick Egan and Richard Clapton and
Great people.
Philip Mortlock and lots of different people.
Yep.
One thing that is very, very common, and I say this sincerely, is that nobody ever at all has ever said a bad word about you, if only the opposite, that a real ally to the band in some of those pivotal early days. And I know over the last 12 months, I think Facebook Messenger, I reached out to you. I think Bea might have reached out to you. We're really glad to get you on. You're one of about 3 remaining guests that we want to chronicle this story with your story.
Ironically, I didn't realise you two are like a team. I thought it was 2 separate podcasts. And the other day I said to Bea, what am I going to tell this Haydn guy?
So I won, obviously.
Because Bea seems really good, but I didn't realise then it's actually the same thing. So that's great. Yeah.
There's not a huge amount of online presence about you in terms of just diving deep. And I'm sort of excited because, the little I do know about you obviously is always impressive. And it's often been stories or things passed on about your contribution to the band through, as I said, through the band members and producers like Mark and Philip and people there. But just tell us about the initial starting point for you around about 1981 and how it all came together.
I had worked with managing other smaller bands and doing what I did, and I went and worked for at an agency and did whatever I could, as a young new member of the music industry. And then one day Chris Murphy rang me, and I knew who Chris was because of he was a booking person and had an agency and all that kind of thing. I'd never met him. And he just said, look, Gary, I've got this young band and I'm looking for a tour manager. At that stage, I had just started working for a company called Joint Artist Management and had offices in Balmain, and I was their in-house booker, and I was booking bands like Gold Rush, the Emmanuel Brothers, the Bushwhackers, and before you laugh, they were actually the biggest act on the label, on the company, because they would sell out the Horden Pavilion playing Australian traditional bushwhacking and a bunch of other bands. And I said, listen, Chris, I'm actually just got this new job and I'm pretty okay, so look, thanks for the offer. A couple of weeks later, he rang me again and he invited me out for dinner at a French restaurant in Glen Street, North Sydney. So, okay, free French meal. I'm up. I'll go and meet Chris Murphy. And I went and had met Chris and we had dinner. And he said, listen, Gary, he actually had knew my resume or my CV. And look, I know you've done this and that. And he said, listen, I think this young band Inxs, I think they've got a chance of being an international thing. And I think you're the right person. And what I'm offering you, yes, is the tour manager job. But if you and I get along, we'll use this as a learning curve for ourselves. And if you and I get along, then we'll become partners and, we'll take this band to the world. And at that stage, I said, well, Chris, I'm actually getting $400 a week at the moment. He said, I'll give you 5. When do I start? Great, and the way he outlined the plans, and, the fact that, he was offering more than just going out as a road manager, because I'd already been on the road with a lot of bands, and it was like, okay, and that sounds pretty good, and I could become your partner, and away we went. Now, this was would have been middle of 1981, because Underneath the Colours was just about to come out.
Right.
The first show that Chris took me into backstage to meet the band was at the Family Inn in Rydalmere, and I believe that was in October, and I think it might even been Halloween, so that rings a bell. So here I am backstage meeting the band, and they're all like, oh, yeah, Chris has told us this is great and blah, blah, blah. And it was showtime that night. And okay, guys, I actually knew the promoter of the pub quite well, because one of the bands I managed, a band called Outline, had done a lot of work with this guy. And so Harry's like, Gary, is there anything you need? And I said, oh, well, can we get some beers and stuff? Yeah, no worries for you, mate. No worries. The next minute they're bringing in beers, and the band are like, this is cool. We like the new guy. Well, they did up until it was like about half an hour before the show, and then it was like, okay, ladies, could you all please make your way to the front of house? And they're all like, what? Yes, it's time to leave. The band are about to do a show, and I need you all to leave. And they're like, and I remember Andrew coming up and going, that's fantastic. I'm really glad you've done that. And it was just like, well, this is what we're going to do here, guys. How we ran it. It was going to always from the start. It had to be done professionally. We sat there and work out the set list and how we would do it. Then as the shows went on, and obviously back in those days, it was a lot of shows, and we were just going up and down and across and up and around and playing anywhere that had a PowerPoint and a stage. In fact, didn't even need a stage, because in those days we used to carry, the roadies would carry bits of plywood, and if we had to make a stage, because there was quite a lot of places, that you had to.
Tell me about the Moontan tours.
Oh, the Moontan dance.
The Moontan dance.
Okay. That was always at the Manly Vale. That was like a full moon.
Yes.
That was a special show that I think the band were already doing those before I came along, and that was just a matter of putting up some decorations and all that sort of thing. And you got to remember, back in those days, there was no breathalyzer and there was no fire marshal capacities. So you had a venue such as the Manly Vale, which was legally, back in we would put nearly 2,000 people in there. When they did bring in the restrictions, I think it was licensed for 500. And it was just pack them in. And, obviously Inxs being Northern Beaches guys, they'd already had success with Just Keep Walking and stuff from the first album. Stay Young was just starting to really get airplay around, and that sort of thing. And it was basically, back in those days, you turn up and they were already lined up for as far as you could see, all waiting to get in.
The facts go, shut up, brother, just keep walking.
Quickly, you had the Love One came out, didn't it? Maybe just as you came on board.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, I think the Love One had already. That was off the first album, so that would have.
No, Richard. I think Richard Clapton, who came on board.
Oh, actually, yeah.
He said, "I'll do this as a cover," and then just before he produced the second album, I think. Yeah.
See,
they got them traction. It gave them another hit.
For you guys that got it over me, where you've been doing this for 5 years, and I've, got to start thinking back 45 years ago.
Yeah, we talk about it every week. We know it.
Well, exactly. I did do some cheating today to have to refresh my things, and that's why I started looking at old photos to try and refresh my memory. And when did that album come out, and all that? But yeah, you're right. So, and that was rather ironic because, working with Andrew and Michael about the running order when there was only the one album, then the Love One came along, which was another hit, and that was great. We could put that in to finish the show, and obviously as they then started to write for Shaboo Shabaa, and then had other songs, particularly we need something that's going to close the show, and Don't Change was written, and they were fun days there sitting with the band and working out what going to open, what the intro tape was going to be.
Can I just stop you there? Did you say that Don't Change was predominantly written to close the show?
Well, it was written as an up song. That was the smart thing about Michael and Andrew and the band at that stage, because they were all co-writing, was the fact that, we just need something that's really just, particularly playing the pubs.
Like an anthem,
You need stuff that's going to, because we had the Angels, we had Chisel, we had Midnight Oil, which was also very healthy for Inxs, because we would quite often support those bands and see what they were doing. And it's like, we really need to, take it up another notch with a couple of tunes too. And Andrew and the boys being great songwriters, you just deliver.
Yeah. So Chris has headhunted you. You've come on board. You had your $400 a week job, and then did you give that the flick and then come and work with Chris?
I did. So I left, and I put my notice in, and then went Ryrie Street in Mossman on the back veranda, one telephone.
And give us a rundown of what that early task for you was doing to sort of build up the momentum.
Well, the most important thing at that stage, which I guess was also my forte, but I was also working with Chris's sister Shan, who was very good with numbers, was to sit there and every dollar counted, which was also a 6-piece band, which years later I would run into. We would cross paths with the police, and I would sit with their manager and just be upset because you've only got 3 of them. I got 6. Bigger bus, more hotel rooms, more airfares. And when you've got, the crew and sound guy and all that, all of a sudden you've got an entourage of 10. But in those early days, it was really just a matter of making sure that, the budgets were tight and adhered to. And that's what we ran very tightly for Inxs the whole time, the whole 12, 13 years, from back in those days at the Moontan dance right through to, Madison Square Garden. It all had to be completely tight with the money, and I think we did a great job on that. Actually, I've seen things like Cold Chisel talking about their days where they were only getting paid $100 a week or something, and I was like, wow, that's funny, because Inxs were getting a little bit more than that, but it still wasn't big money. But they all be able to make rent and that kind of thing. Inxs were also, for the start, you've got the brothers, you've got 6 guys who were very intelligent and really nice people, as well as talented, but they also had support with families and friends and that I think any band needs to have, or any art person, be it a painter or a band, need to have support there when you're going through those tough times. And,
It seemed like the Farris brothers' parents were both individually very supportive too.
Dennis and Jill were fantastic people. And obviously when they did the move west because of John, they were literally parents to the 6 of them. And they were beautiful people, really, really lovely, just really good people, And I think that showed, with the 3 brothers, they were just, really good people too. And but so were the other guys. It was always a big plus for Inxs in those early days. And the fact that they were just nice people that would have to work with them really liked them. Because particularly when we first went to America, and the American couldn't believe just you guys, they're just so nice.
Nice, yeah.
Now, they were used to dealing with those hair, belts, bands that were just all about just mayhem.
Yes.
Here's a new song which will be in our next album. It's called One Thing.
So off air, Gary, you were saying that you had to live in the office at one point.
Well, yeah, there'd be nights where Chris and I would be, just working till like burning the midnight oil, and then Chris would just say, "Gary, you may as well just, crash in the spare room." And he had his, wife and his 2 little girls. Actually, it was the first one was just Steve, and the second one came along,
And Michael was there too at the same time.
at different times Michael would crash, but Michael was pretty, pretty good at crashing in anyone's church.
So that kept the budget down as well, didn't it?
Well, yeah. Again, yeah, I guess it did. That was it. We spent so many hours just, working out tours and dates and budgets and tour names and artwork and graphics and that was just, but it was nothing but fun.
To fill a little important black spot in, I know that the miniseries had limited time over 2 episodes to sort of do this, but you've got like the deluxe era, the two albums. You've got Duncan Maguire on the first. You've got Richard Cumming on the second. You've got Michael Browning, who we've interviewed, who was involved, with Akadaka and then Inxs early days. Chris came involved. You co-managed early. What was the reasoning behind sort of Michael, letting Inxs go with Chris and yourself? What was the period of that had that occurred? Because obviously it was a big change there. We got Mark Opitz in. Do you remember how?
Oh, no, look, again, the specifics. The only thing I can remember is it's just down to money, mate. That was the deal, and my belief, the deal was he got a certain amount, paid out to get the rights back, but he also got overrides on some other albums, and I think it was like, well, okay, that's a good deal. I'm happy to let it go because if this band is going to go on and be successful, I'm going to actually, make some money out of it.
Yeah.
And look, at the end of the day, it's the music business. I think that's what it just got down to, was striking a deal that Michael Browning was happy with, and and he would have done quite well out of it because those 2 first deluxe albums went on to do quite well in back catalogue.
And then you've gone to America with Shabu Shabar that blew up, and then this sort of things. But tell us a bit about, that little risk of going over in 82, 83 to America and things like that. Did you join the band over there, I assume?
Absolutely. Well, at that stage, I was then, became Chris's partner and we did our deal and that was all good. But at that stage, certainly, I was saying to you the night, the first international tour that we did, where I remained as road manager because it was just down to money and, not having to pay a road manager or an extra airfare, was opening for Cultures in New Zealand. And off we went. And it was quite exciting times, It was like, wow, here we go. We're international. We're going to New Zealand. And, oh, my God, we're going to open, I think it was like 10 shows of all these big sound shells for Cultures, or who were gods, to us at that stage. And when we got to the airport, they weren't having great relations with each other at that stage. And here we are with our little shitty bus. And there's Cultures with their big Pioneer, are you bloody sure bus. And so we all jump in our little bus. Next minute, the door opens and it's Jimmy Barnes. And he says, I'm coming with you guys. I can't handle those. So I'm driving this, whatever it was in those days. It was just, the cheapest thing that we can afford. The next minute, we're driving out of Auckland Airport thinking, does it get any better? And next minute, well, it does, because now we've got Jimmy Barnes sitting in the front seat. He's got the radio on, Otis Redding's on, and I'm driving, and here's Jimmy Barnes singing, sitting at the Ducker.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, we're all just like, oh, my God, this is pretty cool. And that was also, the start of a great friendship between Cole Chisel and Jimmy and Inxs. We had a wonderful tour. And then it was time for America, and it was a similar situation, Haydn, where economics rule. We went over there, and it's just so many shows that I would just fill that position to save money. But we did eventually interview and hire a guy named Rick Sales to become the American road manager. And Rick was very cool. And Rick ended up going on to manage bands like Slayer and Mastodon, and he was right into speed metal. But he was a great road manager for Inxs at that stage because he knew all the tricks. And one of the tricks would be to get Michael to walk into the hotel with a ghetto blaster on full blast. To upset the staff and had people come out and harass him. Then Rick would come in, and being a New Yorker, would then start saying, do you know who this guy is? Okay, he's got 9 rooms booked here. And by the time we could finish, we've got the rooms, or 3 of them for free, or they were just they make something to apologize for what had happened. But it was all Rick set up. And he also had, he knew the tricks back in the old days of called Smile and Dial, where they had he'd check us into hotels that had the old spin phones, because with those ones he knew the switchboards. If you flicked a certain combination of numbers, you could jump the international line. That means the guys could come home from the show and they'd all call their wives for free. Smile and dial.
Smile and dial.
And so that's what would happen. We'd get back, because we were opening, I think, with Go-Go's, or and so we'd be back at the hotel at a reasonable time, and it was a good time to smile and dial to Australia, and just Anyway, so Rick was great. And
we might have done that at our university days with the reverse charges from our internal phone at the hostel.
Is that right? Yes. So all those little tricks were just little niceties that would help. Because obviously back in early '80s, calling Australia from America was expensive.
America would have been a jungle of learning exercise for you, going over there, just seeing all of that.
It was completely. But again, those early days, band playing in clubs, and the attitude of the guys was just so good, because even if it was just the bar staff, security, and maybe 12 fans, they would still go out and put on a show as if it was Wembley Stadium. You can bet by the time we got to the next town, there'd be 500 people, because they'd all said, you've got to go and see this band. This Australian band's heading to, they're playing San Francisco. And you could just see that the chain reaction, because the bands, were just so good live. And the same with the record company, because they all came along. They loved the record. The one thing started to get airplay on MTV. It was all buzzing. And then when they actually came and saw how good this band was live and how nice the guys were, because that was so important, it just, it just lit the fuse. We went to New York, Chris and I, and Chris was smart, because, he's a smart man. And he realised that the problem with Australian acts at that stage was that the managers would fly into America and have their meetings in Los Angeles, or have them in New York or whatever, and be told that the project is going to be just fine. And then they'd get on a plane and come back to Australia. The next manager would come in, and your CD's now down at the bottom of the pile. And Chris and I worked out, he said, well, I'm a single guy, Gary, so why don't you just stay in New York? So I said, sure. And that's what we did. We rented an apartment. I just stayed in there. The record company gave us an office to work out of their buildings. I was in their face every day. It wasn't a matter of going back to Sydney. We just stayed there. It was part of the furniture, and got to know them, and got to go out and have dinner and take them, and I'm there every day. And then the agency we were with, ICM, couldn't believe. They said, they'd ring me and go, look, Gary, you're talking direct to the clubs that Inxs are playing? Yep. And is it true that you're actually you're getting posters and that and putting them up? Yep. We just decided to work it like it was Australia, where we would just direct the venues. We would do our own promotion on top of whatever they were doing, set up interviews. That's just not what the American bands did. They just left it to the promoter, and they would just turn up, where we were just driving it every day, every week, just in their faces, and never let it go.
Did you attack a lot of the radio stations over there yourself?
The same thing. I would talk to college radio. I wouldn't deal with the level ones. That was uncharted territories. It's best to leave the record company, and at those stages, remember, there was independents involved, and let them deal with that. But certainly college radio, and you've got to remember, those colleges, they had campuses that had 35,000 people on it. They had their own radio stations, their own television stations, their own concert halls, and Inxs was really doing well in those sort of markets.
That's the movement you want to capture too, isn't it?
Exactly, because okay, well, they don't like us there, but college kids are going to love this band. And we just worked it and worked it. And again, the band were just incredible the way they just would consistently deliver incredible shows, do their interviews, be nice and friendly as they are to everyone. And it just really just helped the whole thing. And on top of that, then, you've got, great records.
So one of the things I'd love your opinion of, we leapfrog to the Swing album, which, in Australia, I think was one of the biggest selling albums of all time when it came out, had original spin. We were fortunate enough to get Noel Rodgers on one of our episodes for a chat. We know some of the lyrics and, stuff like that would be controversial, but were you involved a little bit in America at the time with the Swing album and trying to get that traction there? Because it seems to me, weirdly, that Shabooh Shoobah at the time, peaked higher than the Swing did, and the Americans didn't get the Swing.
No.
Thoughts?
No, you're right, they didn't. And I guess it was because it was Nick Launay did the record, Niles did Original Sin. You had a lot of problems with Southern radio from down south because of the lyrics, that were, they were just upset. The story that was the band were playing Texas and people would pull guns and put them on stage because, that whole interracial thing was just really not their cup of tea. I think it's still cemented after, the Shabooh Shoobah, the hardcore fan base. But it was kind of like a bit of a shock that okay, we thought it would probably do better.
How was the feeling when they got the number 1 in France?
Well, that was pretty exciting times. In fact, I'll send you a photo.
Not that photo.
Michael and I were sharing a room and I got the call.
Is that where you're handcuffed in the mini-series?
We can talk about that. Michael, wake up. Oh, what Original Sin's number 1 in France, and sat up. He jumped up, butt naked, runs out of the hotel onto our little veranda, yells out, "We're number 1 in France!" And Michael, across the way at roof height, are a whole bunch of nuns. And he's butt naked, singing to the world that we're number 1 in France. There's a whole bunch of nuns praying on the roof across the way, and it's like, oh my God, that was pretty amazing. I mean, that really just ignited the whole thing in Europe, because if you recall, we had refused to go. Well, England had considered us to be a poor man's Split Ends. I think the magazine had quoted, if I'm quoting it right, and it was like, well, okay, and yeah, they're good, but they only just played to Australian audience when they played, whatever places we did, and that was like, what, bugger it, we're actually doing okay in some markets in France, and that we'll go and play over there. And that was pretty smart. Okay, we'll just pick some key journalists and bring them over to see the band play, in front of 6,000 French fans. That was really exciting times because, particularly, I guess, being Australian or certainly an English-speaking band, to go and stand in Paris and hear 6,000 French people singing every word was just really goosebumps stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really like, I think the band, realised like, this is
real.
How good is this, Yeah, so that was
international. So what was the handcuffs all about?
Okay. Well, there was a good friend of ours and the band, Rob Muir, who started FM radio in Australia. Wonderful man. He and his wife had an apartment in Paris. Actually, Dave Nicholas, who engineered some of Inxs's records, worked with Mark and that, was staying there. We were all in town. We're all going out. We're having a great time. Now what are we going to do? Let's go back to the apartment and have a party. So we go back and it's 2:00 in the morning or whatever. And the old French lady downstairs thought we'd broken in. She's called the gendarmes, and silly me opens the door. So in they come, Uzi's out, handcuffs, me against the wall. Michael's in another room with the only people who could speak French. So that took about 5 or 6 minutes for them to filter out to go, what's going on? I'm standing there with an Uzi in my face, handcuffed. And then there's French people start talking French. And next minute it's like, oh, mon Dieu, Michael Hutchins. Next minute, they're getting their photos taken with Michael. Oh, it's Michael Hutchins. I'm like, now that we're all friends, can someone take the handcuffs off me? And then that was just a misunderstanding, and they talked, and then they realised that it was not a break-in, and we were okay to be there. That whole thing with that Channel 7 thing was, they sent me the script, and I'm talking to Mark Fennessy, the producer, and I said, Mark, this is not what actually happened. And you've got that's not when it, he said, Gary, mate, we're not making a documentary here. We're making fluffy TV. And look, if you don't want to be in, I said, no, just do whatever. Now, I don't know, if you remember, Chris was the producer And I guess he was just trying to have a crack at me because he had the guy cast to play me. Firstly, had a moustache, which I never had, and he had him wearing a fishnet singlet. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Did notice that.
Chris's weird sense of humour, you know?
Gary, do you want a nice little anecdote here?
What?
Do you know who he's married to in real life?
No.
He's married to a very famous Australian actress called Sarah Snook, who was the won the Emmy for Succession.
Yeah, no, she's a brilliant actress.
Brilliant actress, yeah.
She's married to the guy who played me.
Dave Lawson, they were flatmates in Footscray, and then they were friends during COVID, and they became more than friends. And yeah, I mean, he's in a great Australian show called Utopia.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, he's a very funny actor, but he hammered up a little bit. I assume when I watched it.
Yeah, well, again, whether that's just Chris and Tim, taking the piss, I don't know, because it's like, well, hang on, I never had a moustache, and I would never wear, I'd never wear that. But whatever, I watched that and just sat back and enjoyed it as just good television. That's what it was meant to be, and they were right. It was certainly not a documentary. Well, it was watching.
Yeah. A good segue about moustaches, Gary. I believe you got a very interesting Freddie Mercury story. Is that right? Now, I did a bit of research. Share with our audience a bit about Freddie, and maybe you probably were there when they were doing the support tour with Queen and that.
Well, no, it was just before the support tour, but we were in Montreux. We were going out. Now, Michael and I were going out to check out bands or whatever. Now, being the good manager that I am, Michael's got things that he shouldn't have. And it's like, Michael, let me carry that, because if you get arrested, I'm not having to go on stage next week to open for Queen, and so I'll just take it. And then we run into Freddie and his manager. We're chatting away, and we're looking forward to the tour, and it's going to be great. But listen, I've got my new solo album. This is Freddie. Do you guys want to come up to my hotel room and listen to it? Yeah, sure. Let's go up to Freddie's hotel room and listen to his new solo album. So we're up there, and obviously Michael said, Freddie, you feel like maybe a line of coke. He's like, yes, please. It's Gary. So I come over and I've got holding the drugs. Get it out. Freddie puts out pretty much the whole thing and just puts his face into it. And then he stands up, walks over to me, and kisses me on the lips. Michael's cracking up, and all I could think of is I turn to his manager and say, does that mean we can have the drum riser on stage? He said, I think so.
I bet it was a party night after that.
Well, he played us his solo album and he sang the whole way through it. It was just quite amazing. Next, the Grand Hotel or whatever amazing hotel they were staying at in Montreux, and Freddie's just there singing along to his new album and just having a good old.
I'm going to call it 1-1. You had Barnesy in your car singing Dock of the Bay, and he went on to do Soul Deep, the biggest selling album of his career. So I'm going to you as the inspiration for that. Freddie's solo album didn't do as good.
No, well, I can't remember what that album was called at the time, but I know it never did anything, and whatever it was. That said, Inxs opening for Queen was incredible because they learnt so much, and you could not ask for a nicer bunch of people. Inxs opened for bands like the Kinks, who just didn't want to know about us. In fact, the last thing they said before the band was only a one-off show in Canada, and they said, whatever you do, you can't use the catwalks. We call them ego ramps, of course. Yeah. So, it gets down to don't change, and you think that's going to stop Michael. He's straight out where he's not told he's not to go. Of course he's going to do it. But they were just not nice to us. Adam.
They didn't even like each other, did they?
No, they were just
Ray and
English guys that were just, adamant, that guy, well, he was just Adam Arsehole was it. And I opened the door one day and it's his tour manager saying, you've got to come up to Adam and his manager need to talk to you. And we got up there and he wanted Inxs gone off the tour, because what they would do, they would hand out party passes to the girl fans. And then the girl fans would come back to the hotel where they would then be rechecked to see who are the better looking ones. And then you get a separate pass and you can go to the party, but you can't. What would happen is those hotels that we actually were in the same hotel, they would come to the bar, see Inxs and go, fuck Adam, we're staying here with these guys.
Or not.
And Adam was really upset that, he was hearing stories about, the cutting in on his girls and whatever. And I thought, mate, we're just a bunch of young Aussie blokes a long way from home like you, mate. And I just gave the whole spiel. And about half an hour later, okay, well, right, you're on the tour, but, I just need stop calling me.
I think it's a good example where you go back to that particular era.
Yeah.
Adam Man had a shelf life of about 18 months, and it was a bit of a gimmick. I mean, Inxs was sort of the real deal,
Yeah. Well, ironically, at the end of the tour, his band hated him too. In fact, he did this thing like a Houdini thing. And on the last night, they filled it with goldfish. When the curtain lifted up, there's Adam and when the goldfish floating around. That night, though, he sent the band a bunch of bottles of champagne. And they knocked on the door and And Andrew said, you know what, can you take this back to Adam and tell him to shut him up his ass?
Andrew said that.
So cool. And ironically, a couple of years later, you know, Inxs were obviously going on to bigger and better things, and we're going through support action, and it's like, is he serious? Adam Ant wants to support us? That's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point. You know, there's so many little cool vignettes and timelines here. We got, you know, the Go-Go's sort of tour as well, and then we were around the Swing album there, where I think Bowie came to Australia and was struggling to sell out, and wanted Inxs on one of the support gigs, didn't they?
I didn't know that.
It came up with someone we interviewed. I can't quite remember the timelines, but it was the sort of Spider tour or whatever. But maybe we'll go back to the Go-Go's. That's probably more memorable for you.
Well, that was I'm thinking of the time when Chris went to meet David Bowie and his manager in Japan. Chris says, so who's opening for you? I think that was Sirius Moonlight Tour.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And he said, I don't know, he said to Coco, and she's going, it's a band called the, what are they called? Melbourne band, hippie band, not the Iguana band. Anyway, Chris goes, oh, uncool. Right.
It said uncool to Davey Bowie.
Yeah.
About the potential support band.
He said, no, you got to put the models on. The models are the coolest thing, and they're going to be much better. Models got the tour. Yeah, but I don't remember Inxs ever being asked about. That may have happened.
I think they were, and it was sort of aimed to fill some of the tickets, some of the big festival shows.
I think it was around the Kick era, though, wasn't it?
No, it was around the Swing tour.
Was it?
His Let's Dance album, but
was it? Well, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
well, let's go back to the Queen. What did you learn on that?
I think was, you know, what certainly Michael got was to see Freddie, who was the stadium, you know, performer, how you project to 50, 60, 70,000 people, how tight they were musically. There was certainly one thing that, you know, because they were so lovely and friendly, and yes, you want to put your drums and do and that. And Inxs actually had made a rule after being mistreated by Adams, and that if we're going to ever have a support band, when we get to a stage where we're having support bands, if we want this band on, we've got to be nice to them too. And they were like that. They were also the same, you know, in those early days in America, you know, the band were such gentlemen about the fact that, you know, that whole backstage thing, you know, and they sat down the crew and said, that's never to happen. You know, we'll give them tickets. They don't need to do sexual favors to get them. We have a different thing in Australia, and we respect women, and we're not going to let, you know, we just don't want that to happen. And I thought that was, you know, really cool, you know, the band did that.
Oh.
Yeah, Kirk and Andrew were particularly vocal about that, you know, about, no, you know, we've got to respect women, and that's what went on. We were talking before then about New York. So I went to New York and sat there, and then what would happen, the band would be coming in, and I would have all the different girls in the record company. Okay, well, Michael needs new shoes, and Kurt needs to find some reeds for his saxophone. And I'd set them up with lunch dates, and they just would come back and go, oh, man, we love this band. These guys are just such great guys. They're just really good. And then they go and see the show, and then they're amazing live. And that was such a big part of, you know, the success of Inxs, was the fact that they were just good people, you know, talent aside, and the fact that then these people that just loved working with them because they were used to being, you know, mistreated and treated like second-rate citizens. You know, Inxs was always on their desk and, you know, in the forefront. And that was just so important at that stage. And it really did well for the band.
I've had a few girls come back to me over the socials, and they always say how wonderful you were in allowing them to meet Inxs at the time. And there's one particular lady called Sue D. I don't know if you remember Sue D. Yeah, so she actually followed them all the way over on the Listen Like Thieves tour as well. She was from America. Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, that was, you know, but, you know, I you know, was fully like that kind of way of thinking too. It was like, you know, and all these beautiful people would turn up and they want to meet the band and that, and they were so used to being told that I can get out and have security and put the dogs on them, and we just weren't like that. So, you know, I did wherever it was possible, you know, to get people in. When Mystify came out, Richard Lowenstein invited me to come and do some showings and then join him on stage for Q&A at the end of it. And it was really lovely. And then people go, oh, Gary, I don't know if you remember me, but back in 1981 at the Manly Bowl, you took us in and we met the band. And I'm like, oh my God, 40 years ago. Oh, that's really nice. And it was really lovely because so many people, like you just said, come up to me and said, oh, Gary, look, you know, you're always just so kind and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that was just my nature, you know.
I've got a good quote from someone. I'll read it out. I really admire bands like Inxs who have effected a copybook takeover of America by the hardest method there is, wearing away at the stone. haranguing the market by constant touring. I find that can be heartbreaking and exhausting. Now, that's a quote from a bit of a contemporary. There's Ivor Davies from Icehouse.
Okay.
You would have seen that up close and personal, like Death of a Thousand Cuts, just chip away.
Oh, look, and it took its toll. I've got to say, obviously, there was so many shows, so many thousands of miles. I think I mentioned the other day, Andrew Farris was hilarious because it was at that stage where he was just like, Andrew, we're going to do another tour. He says, great. We get on the bus and it's 60 kilometers an hour. Then we get on the plane, it's 400 kilometers an hour. Then we get on a train, it's 200. His whole life was just about what speeds he was going. But that was also, the same with everyone. We were pretty frazzled and fried. I think it was that like the whole thing with the Kick album, like if that hadn't really exploded, then, God knows what may have happened with Inxs. But fortunately, the band came up with a stunning album.
Well, yeah, you've had lists like these that got that traction in America with the top 5 hit.
Yeah.
It's sort of, within 18 months, they were able to come out with Kick and then, everything followed.
Yeah.
The explosion from the college circuits to the bigger arenas and how your role evolved.
Well, again, my role was, I was quite often ahead of the band and going into, California's or wherever and meeting the record company and setting up, and the band were on their way. And then I would go and join them, fly in. And then that also transposed across to Europe, where I would then go across to London. I also spent quite a few months in Amsterdam. Of course, Polygram were in Dutch town called Baan. So I would stay I lived in Amsterdam, and then I would get the train out to Baan. Then I would get the train down to Belgium or France and go and meet the record company, Jimmy, because it was all just, you could do it by train without too much fuss, and just continually being in their faces the whole time. Same thing in America. I was just there, and Canada, just going up and having a permanent presence. And I think that was really important, that, we weren't just talking at weird times in the morning from Australia. We were actually there having lunch with them, doing that, talking to people from New York, and they could talk to us at reasonable times and all that. I think that was, really a smart call by Chris to say this is what we should do. And I thought, yep, sounds good.
But humbly speaking, you're there on the ground doing that groundwork, which is so critical. And Europe was probably the last frontier to sort of tip over for the band, which Kick and then X and that sort of period of time did there. I mean, you must have taken a lot of pride from just seeing, your good work have traction come through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was really exciting times, but it was also what we would play Polygram off against Echo. Well, gee, the Germans have come up with a really good idea, and you guys, and the French are going to do this, and they're going to do that. The Americans go, well, okay, we're going to do something too, and then we go over to, the French or that, they say, gee, the Americans have come up with a really good idea, and they're doing these stickers, and they're doing all, whatever those, back in the 80s, all those things they used to do, posters and stickers, and because there were still record shops, of course, and, they're doing special edition vinyl, and, okay, we should do that too, and so we had a lot of fun in that, going, yeah, great, now, look at this, the French are going to do a coloured vinyl too. Or it was really rewarding. As I said, turning up in foreign countries and hearing non-English speaking people singing along with every lyric is just, was just so rewarding. What we also, Chris and I loved doing too was when Chris Thomas or Mark Opitz or whoever it was would say, I think we've got a hit, you should come down to the studio and hear this track. I'll go off to the studio and then you play it and what you need, and Chris and I just look at each other and go,
wow. Excited.
When we first heard Origin Sin, I was like, oh my God.
And this was all before computers and mobile phones. It was fax machine was probably just coming in then, was that?
The fax machine was there. Mobiles was just coming in, but they were quite cumbersome, and it was literally, you had to have a whole briefcase dedicated. But we, getting on the bus with the band, we'd still have to stop in road stops to drop a dime for the band to do an interview with a radio station in the town we're heading to. There was no, not like the
phone it in.
Yeah, there was no computers or no smartphones, or thank God.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah, but that was just the old-fashioned way of having to stop, and and I know that the road managers would carry lots of coin, like quarters, because you have to feed the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a all right, B, we're going to get into some pleasure and pain. Now, we haven't done this for about over a year. Now, I thought to myself,
longer, I reckon.
I can't even remember what year we finished on, but I thought in light of Gary Grant, we'll go back to the year he started with Inxs in 1981. This is when you would have been, 26 or 27, B?
Calf.
Maybe 16 or 17. Okay.
No, I was a lot younger than that.
Okay. All right. Well, I was 10, so there you go.
Yeah. And I was 8.
This was all right. This is a pivotal year for me because I remember going on holidays to Queensland with my dad and my stepbrothers and sisters and things like that. And music was being blared all over Cavill Avenue out on the beach. And it was June, it was school holidays, and it was so awesome. So I have a very fond memory of some songs around this time. Now, we're going to put a little montage on together. I'm going to come back and mention which of these artists are. So over to you, B, with this montage. All right, B, we're coming back there. The first one we heard there was Jealous Guy by Brian Ferry, which was about 6 months after dearly departed John Lennon died, and was a tribute song and went #1 around Australia. And I thought it was one of the best songs, and I didn't realise it was a John Lennon song until 5 years later. And it's one of the rare covers where I like both versions as much as each other, but the Roxy Music version here with Brian rocks. Second one we heard there was an Australian artist, a guy called Ross Wilson from a band called Mondo Rock, famous song at the time called Cool World that I still love to this day. The next one, a lot of my kids think this is the Kmart song, and a lot of people in Australia think it's a Kmart song, but it's actually a hit back in the early 80s called Counting the Beat. Heavy bass line there. The guitarist went on to play in Midnight Oil, but this was a big hit for this New Zealand outfit. Number 4B, I know you recognise there, Betty Davis Eyes, which I'm sure was a big hit in the UK as well, from the one and only Kim Carnes. Next one there, Jessie's Girl, Rick Springfield, Melbourne-born, Australian guy. Went on to become a star in General Hospital and then a big singer-songwriter in America. Still a cool song. The next one, B, not a chocolate ad, but the In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins, who you mentioned earlier, with a big drum beat, later parodied in a gorilla in a chocolate ad. Still a cool song all those years later. Next one on there, Our Lips Are Sealed, The Go-Go's. Great song, but also co-written by a guy from one of those ska bands there, I think Terry Hall, who played in...
Fun Boy Free.
He did, but he had the other band, didn't he? They had that
Specials.
song, Ghost Town.
Yeah, which is in my list next week.
There you go. There you go. And also they had the theme song to Death in Paradise. As a show.
He was also in a band called Ocean Colour Scene as well.
Did he? What's the famous band he was in again? Just the name escapes me. The one I'm talking about.
Specials.
The Specials, that's it, yeah. Also, next one there, Under Pressure, Spring and Bowie, fantastic. What a great song around that particular time, which was Under Pressure. Next one, Rapture by Blondie, melded both dance and hip-hop and everything together, one of the early days. And the very last one there was Hit Me With Your Best Shot from Pat Benatar, still rocks and still sounds cool all these years later. They were my pleasures. B, we don't have time for the painful ones, but I will mention a couple of painful ones for me in this era. I've got 9 to 5, okay? That is the actual 9 to 5 song from Dolly Parton. The 9 to 5 song, or Morning Train, Sheena Easton, remember that one?
God, yes.
Yeah, I've got Believe It or Not, We're Walking on Air by Joey Scarborough, the Greatest American Heroes theme. I thought it was great at the time. It sounds cheesy now. I've got Young Turks by Rod Stewart. Loved it at the time, but it's cheesy now. ELO, Hold On Tight. More Than I Can Say, Leo Say Us. So that's More Than I Can Say, B.
I was going to say, we've only had 2 crossovers. You've heard one, so we'll see which one was the other. But yeah, a completely different list from me.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me indulge, B. I think it's now time for the wrap.
Hey, this is Paul Jolly from Sydney, and this is The Big Wrap.
That was fantastic. It's really good to hear your pleasure and your pains there, Haydn. And going back to Gary Grant, wow, that was just unbelievable. I'm so glad we got him on in the end. And just hearing, that he was really hands-on. And for me, he was the guy that went forward. He was like, the guy that everybody sort of knew. He was on the ground.
And, you can really tell his sense of passion, enthusiasm to this day, even all these years after. And, it's always a little bit sad that maybe towards the end him and Chris did fall out, and it seems to be a bit of a common thread with Chris, with certain people around that time. Some of the photos that Gary shared with us are fantastic, aren't they, B? And I know they're starting to come in, and there's some unique photos there that hopefully we can share on our socials over the next period.
It's good that you mentioned that, because Gary is, fingers crossed, he'd love to come to our next party, which is in January, and he's going to bring his photo album. So that would be awesome for us all to see. Yeah. Talking about our parties, Bruce Butler's also wanting to come along. So this party's going to get fantastic.
I think it's time for Timmy and your connection with Timmy to step up to come to this one. Kirk's done the heavy lifting last time, so maybe Tim can come to this one.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Now, be a very, very special time. The world's longest raffle is about to be drawn today. So we have lots and lots and lots of tickets. We've got our Inxs letterbox there. I'm going to hand it over to you for drawing duties. We're hoping that someone in America can receive it at some point if they're drawn out. But how many tickets are we drawing today, B? Is it 2 or?
2? No, 1.
Just 1?
Yeah, just one. We've only got one goodie bag coming out, and it's got loads of... Yeah, come on, give me a drum roll. Which one? Oh, that one feels a bit big. Tell me when to stop.
Yeah.
That sounded a bit rude, didn't it? Sorry.
I'm used to them saying that to me, B. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. I think this guy's won one of our prizes before, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's one of our patrons. So
Ah,
that's really
excellent.
cool. Yeah. But the bad news is it's in America.
Okay. It's America. Fair enough.
Okay. So John Finlayson.
Yay.
Yay, in Maryland in the United States. So hopefully we can get you that. I'm not sure we can send chocolate in the post. Hayden wanted you to have chocolate, but you'll definitely get the wrapper.
We'll find a way. Well done, John. So just repeat for listeners what John's picking up.
Oh, so John is picking up one of our goodie bags, which was given to us by the record company, Petrol. And inside that, you'll have the latest release from Inxs, which is the double CD of Listen Like These, which has got the Royal Albert Hall live on there and some of the demos, which is just superb. I mean, those two things are enough, but no, you've got more. You've got the guitar pick straight from Tim Farriss with his name on it. We've made that into a necklace. Kurt Pengilly has signed a CD, a secret CD, bit of a special prize there. We've got the chocolate wrapper that you mentioned, and we've also got the JB Hi-Fi magazine with the Listen Like These article in there as well. I think that's it.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, we've got part 2 of Gary Grant.
Oh, and the lanyard.
Oh, and the lanyard. Fantastic. We've got part 2 of Gary Grant next week. We're going to unravel a whole bunch of other stories and anecdotes and memories to share with you. But I thought with the theme today being 1981 with Gary joining the Inxs family, the pleasure and pain of 81, we would go out with a song from 1981 that still sums up Gary. I still think he stays young, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I still think he has a youth and an exuberance about himself. So we're going to go out with a version of Stay Young. We're going to dedicate this to Gary and thank you for coming on and look forward to his chat next week. But it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from B. Goodbye, everybody.
Much more.
Well, hello. Welcome to Inxs Access All Areas, episode 228, the podcast that always dives deep into all things great about our favourite band, doing with a bunch of listeners around the world, even a new patron this week, I believe, B. 3 patrons.